Hey there, this is Rocky from WheelerandChess.com. Got a pretty cool video here today on a sideline in the Scotch Gambit. And even if you don't play this as white, if you play the Evans Gambit, you might see some similar lines in the declined version. If you're a black player who responds e5 to e4, you probably should look at this video as well. And even if you don't play the white or the black side of these kinds of positions, it might be good to look at just to get some interesting ideas that could come up in similar positions in other games. So let's take a look here. I played the Scotch Gambit, which is a little bit different than there's some similar gambits that white can play that I don't usually play them, but if you look on the Chess Explained YouTube channel, which by the way is a great channel if you're not watching it yet, he has a recent 15-minute game where Christoph had the black pieces and his opponent had the white pieces. And instead of playing bishop c4 here, his opponent played the immediate c3, which is the Goring Gambit. And there's also another similar looking gambit where before even playing knight f3, then white plays this, which is the Danish Gambit. So there's some interesting things to look at in all those games. All pretty open positions and tactically rich, strategically rich as well. So, okay, let's go back to the game. Okay, and so I played the Scotch Gambit. Okay, so the main line is, just really quickly, is knight f6, and then you sort of get this sequence of moves where black gets this tempo gaining move, saves his knight, white gets his pawn back, pressure on c6. Black defends it, white usually takes with the bishop here, and black doesn't want to take with the bishop because if you're going to end up with doubled c-pawns, you might as well at least keep your bishop there and keep more pieces on the board. So black usually takes with the pawn, and then usually castles, and then there's different plans and types of games that could happen from here, but that's for another video. If you are a Diamond member on chess.com, go to the video lessons, and sorry, this is all a little off the screen here. So go to the video lessons and then search for underrated openings, and you'll get this old series by GM Room and Gingias Feely. It's actually a 3-part series. This 4th part's on a variation of the French Winnower. I'm not sure why he threw that in. He was probably planning on doing more videos than that, just didn't get back to it. But these first 3 videos, the first video is on several sidelines that black can play against white in the Scotch Gambit, and then there's got some couple videos on the main lines and some positions that can arise. Great series. I have to keep revisiting it because I always forget things. But okay, so let's get back to what happened actually in the game so we can look at the position that I made this video for. So instead of knight f6, another move that you often see as white is this bishop c5 move, and white has this aggressive move c3. And black doesn't want to take here because then white gets a good game with this combination here, where, well, if he plays to f8, then you get the piece back with check, so he'll usually go to a white square, and then you can check here first, which kind of forces him to open up this long diagonal, and then he's probably never going to take here. I think I've only had somebody take there like once or twice. He doesn't immediately lose the rook, but he might not lose it at all, but he's going to have to do some sort of gymnastics to, not lose the exchange, to get his king safe, to develop his pieces, and in the meanwhile, you're just going to castle. You've got these awesome open files for your rooks and your queen. You've got this unopposed dark square bishop on the long diagonal, so this is terrible. So usually, black will realize he's in trouble already, so he'll probably play something like d6. You can drop your queen back. He probably still won't take. I'm not even sure what he would play. You could probably still just. He might take here, so maybe you could have taken with the knight here, but in any case, you're going to get something like. Again, I don't know what the best moves here are for black. I'm not even thinking about it so much, but you're going to get something like this, where eventually you'll probably get your bishop to b2 anyway, and it's going to take black a couple moves to get his king safe, and in the meantime, you're just developing and getting a really nice position. So, I don't know what the computer value of this is. It's not like white's winning necessarily. It's just that he's probably got a comfortable, like, close to a pawn advantage or something. But, okay, so that's why black shouldn't take that pawn. And my opponent knew that. So there's other things. You can just leave it there. could play like knight f6, or you could play d6, or I've even seen h6, and maybe queen e7. Queen e7 actually might not work here. But in any case, there's some different moves, but you're probably going to be able to take, like after white castles, you're probably going to be able to take this pawn and get a nice pawn center, so that's another way to go, and that's one of the reasons that the bishop c5 line is probably not as good as the knight f6 line. So, okay, so in any case, he didn't do any of that, and he played this interesting move, d3. So, kind of trying to find a better way to give up this pawn, and the idea is to distract one of white's pieces from its ideal square for just one move, which is, the idea is that that's enough time to try and consolidate. Now, in the game I just played queen takes without thinking too much. I just thought that he couldn't immediately play excuse me, he couldn't immediately play knight e5 to fork my pieces here, which even still wouldn't be the end of the world, but if I don't have to give up my light square bishop here, that would be nice. So it's going to take him a move, maybe first to play d6 before he can play that fork. Even then I can take it, but then the e5 score would be blockaded, and it would be nice to be able to play e5, for example, if he plays knight f6 without playing d6 first. So in any case, I didn't really think about any other moves, and I should have, because there's some other interesting ideas. It turns out that queen takes d3 is actually the best move after I let it run in Stockfish for about 20 minutes, but not because I looked at why. And I think it's interesting to look at why, because it's actually really involved. So, okay, from this position here, I started to analyze the game myself after the game first without looking at the computer, which is a really good idea because it really helps you. I feel like I remember stuff more that way. And when I was looking at it myself, I was like, why didn't I think of knight g5? I mean, it looks great because I'm already getting pressure on f7, and you can imagine if I could somehow get my queen to g5, like if he allowed that, I'd have all kinds of pressure. So this is interesting, and sometimes you do see this sort of sequence of events if black messes up and lets you do it, where you just get this immediate pressure. But here, black has a very nice reply, which is knight e5, and it just does a few things at once. Of course, it attacks the loose bishop. It also defends f7, and it blockades e5. So all these things are undesirable for white, and this would be bad. I mean, the computer just recommends just sort of taking this. Actually, black probably wouldn't even go for the bishop pair here, just because that knight is so great on e5. It blockades his square. He could take the bishop in a few moves, maybe after he gets his knight to f6, castles, and it's a little safer. So then, I was thinking, but still, I mean, just to try to preserve the bishop pair, if he did this, then probably a few different things. Maybe queen e7, maybe knight f6 here. f4 is arguably the best move, but it's pretty crazy. I mean, you get something like this where knight f2 is coming with a fork, and it doesn't quite work to play e5 yet because that fork's coming. So you probably have to take this and allow the fork anyway, but at least under more favorable circumstances, because you could either play queen c4 with a mate threat, or you could play bishop takes here, and yeah, then actually it's kind of tricky here. For if he plays here, then that's bad because of knight e6 check. Actually, yeah, he can't take this because then you take his queen with check, and he won't get a chance to take your queen, so that means he's got to play here. And now the tables are turned, and white can't take here because black takes with check, and that's terrible because then everything's hanging. So he could take another piece with his knight, and then maybe take this knight with his king, and then this bishop's loose, and this pawn is hanging. This is terrible. So so if that's the case, then white has to find another move here, which I don't even know what the best move is here. It's probably maybe it's queen c4. I'm not really sure, but yeah, that's super messy, super crazy, and white could avoid some of that by just having taken on d3. But in any case, all these positions are really sharp, and black's got some chances here and some dynamic play that, if you're going to play the Scotch Gambit as white, you don't really want to give that kind of play. Like, you want to play with the initiative. So So knight g5 is not a great option. It's not even in like in the top like 7 or 8 moves, I don't think, recommended by Stockfish. So okay, so what else could we do? Well, let's look first at the best move, which is queen takes d3, and then we'll see, why it's the best move when we look at the other two variations that I'm going to look at. So here, black could play a few different things, but knight f6 comes to mind. Just trying to get castled, and here, yeah, I'm just always tempted to play e5, and that might be the best. But I think no, actually, best here is this plan that we're going to see a couple times, and this is what reminded me of the Evans Gambit, because this move b4 is usually played earlier in the Evans Gambit, and when black has a chance to actually take it because there's not a pawn on c3, but sometimes he declines and goes back. So the pieces aren't exactly on the same spots. Like a lot of times white would have a queen on b3 in the Evans and the pawn wouldn't be on c3, but you see this kind of similar plan in the declined versions of the Evans Gambit, where now white's threatening obviously to play a5 and trap the bishop. So one common reply is this, and then you get this, and this is kind of similar with a couple small differences. But there's a really good video series on the Evans Gambit by GM Ronan Harzi. I'm not sure if I'm sure I'm pronouncing his name wrong. He was like the best bullet player in the world a little while back before Nakamura, and he does a lot of instructional lessons with like Ben Feingold down in the St. Louis Chess Club. There's some videos on YouTube with him, and you can get that. It's like a 14-part video series on the Evans Gambit on onlinechesslessons.net. I'll put a link up in the post. Fun series to watch. I got through about half of it. I gotta keep going with it. Okay, so anyway, then this position gets pretty crazy. Obviously, black can't play knight e5 just yet because it just gets taken. So that means he's either got to retreat it, or this option with queen e7 is kind of interesting, but queen e7 doesn't quite work here because you can just take this, because this pawn is protected once, so he wouldn't, like, if the queen wasn't here, then he would have been able to take with the queen with check and then take this bishop. But that's not available here. I can just castle, or actually, I can take first with check and then castle. And now I'm threatening to play rook e1 with consequences. So the queen e7 resource isn't there in this line because the queen is on d3, and that's one of the reasons that that this line is good, which of course I didn't see this when I was playing and only saw it after the analysis. So this is an interesting idea. Queen takes d3 with this queenside expansion that comes with, so you're gaining space with tempi, I think is the idea. So so let's look at a couple other lines without queen takes d3. So we might look at b4 right away, because we're looking at this plan in a couple different lines. And then if we get this position, then this queen move does work, because if we were to take now, then this comes with check, and again he's getting this piece back. So that's not what we would want to play for white. So that's the reason why queen d3 is slightly better, more precise than the immediate expansion. And then another move obviously could we look at is just simply castling. And we could look at a couple lines here that are interesting. I mean, well, what if he plays d6? And d6 is kind of interesting because if we do the same sort of expansion, black can now play knight e5 because the knight's protected, and he blockades this important e5 square where it's white's never going to play e5 now, and he's also got a tempo on this bishop. So maybe and if I take this, then I can't immediately take, well, I can't take this pawn back actually, which I would probably have to do. But then I'm not sure. It's probably about equal, but white's given up the a little bit of the advantage that he had. Maybe he still has a really slight advantage. It would be interesting to see what, I forget what Stockfish evaluates this here, but this is an important move that black would have here that he doesn't have if he doesn't play d6. So if he plays knight f6 here instead of d6, then I'll probably have to look back at the computer again here. I mean, it could probably just take. I do have the e5 option now, and I think that knight f6 probably isn't a great move, probably because of e5. Because here, the difference is that, like, for example, if he plays something like this, he's not getting a tempo on my f2 pawn. My king's safe, and I might even be able to play something like maybe queen e1 and then try to play like h4, although he probably got queen e7. But this could get a little bit messy too. So I think the point here is that you want to watch out for this blockading maneuver, and we could avoid that also if we play this queen d3, because it's going to be harder for him. Like here, if he plays d6, let's see. Well, he would be able to do that, wouldn't he? So let's take a quick look at Stockfish to see what Stockfish is saying here. So we looked here at, let's see, we get this so you guys can see it. I probably should look for another way to set this screen up, but okay, I already did it. So okay, so in this position here, we looked at queen d3, but let's say we looked at castling here, and okay, so if we look here at castling, so let's look at the differences between knight f6 here, and yeah, e5 is the recommended move, at least letting it go here quickly, and with knight g4, yeah, this is something you should look out for in these Scotch openings and Evans Gambit, because a lot of times you can get sort of these sacrifices in here. Oops. Knight g5 check, and then taking the knight back, and it actually does work here. It doesn't always work. Like, for example, if this pawn's already been played, or if black can play the d pawn with the tempo on the queen in a favorable way afterwards, which is certainly possible. But here, I don't think he really gets anything with like d5 or something like that, because you can get a check, or you can play back to the f file or something like that. So okay, so, and again, this rook is protecting f2, which is helpful in case like the other rook comes to the f file, something like that. So so then let's look at d6, which is now coming up as the best option here. And then if we do this b4 a4 plan, then what is the computer saying here? Yeah, it is just saying to go for this sort of blockading. And computer doesn't want to take yet back, just has ideas of either queen h5 to put some pressure, or knight d2 with something like this. And this is another idea that both in the Evans Gambit and in the Scotch Gambits, you'll often see ideas of getting this bishop to a3, and you just have these awesome bishops like firing across the board. Of course, black has bishops too, so might be able to oppose them and trade something off. But yeah, this is an interesting position. I mean, white can still get this pawn back, so it's not really a problem, and his development's pretty good. But it's about half pawn advantage. It's pretty much even. So so I guess if you're black, this idea might be to play this d6 move so that you can meet this queenside expansion with the blockading move. And that can happen in a couple of the variations there. But let's see, the last thing I wanted to look at was that if we, okay, let's just go all the way back here. I want to see if we play queen takes d3, if that plan would still work with d6. So here, if we go for this expansion, and we get this series of moves, yeah, this is really interesting, and I forgot about it. I had looked at it a little while ago. Here, it's pretty amazing because it looks so similar, but here, this knight e5 blockade does not work, because if takes here, then we've got this bishop trick where, this would obviously lose the queen, right? So you can't do that. and that means he just lost a pawn. So where's he going to put his king? Like probably e7. And here we've got again this idea of bishop a3 comes to this awesome diagonal, and here, yeah, c5 sort of saves the queen here because now it's protected by the bishop. But just like dropping this bishop back here, now I've got really nice placed bishops. His bishop's kind of silly now, and let's just say he goes after this here. I could probably castle or just keep developing, and just something like this here, getting this knight to a great square. Keep an eye on this bishop, which is going to be important in some variations, and yeah, trying not to trade queens here because our king's going to be safer than his. This is really long, but the point here is, yeah, even queen d4 is a safe square. That's funny because of the pin. But something like this, you're going to win another pawn is the whole point here. So, and then whatever happens here, let's just say he gets his king safe and we castle, then not only are we up 2 pawns, but probably we're going to be able to move these pieces and mobilize our c-pawn. And you can imagine if we can get this c-pawn up to c6, trade, and then we've got a protected pass around c6, plus we're up to 2 pawns, our development's complete. This is just really great. So this, man, I did it again. This blockading in this one situation didn't work here. So if you're black and you're going to play for this knight e5, just make sure here it doesn't work because the king's still unsafe, and because the queen, again, another advantage having this queen on d3 is that we're opposing the queen, so the king won't be able to go to certain squares. And that was the only, those are the only reasons that this blockade didn't work here. So you have to be careful if you're black, and if you're white, you have to look out for this possibility where, if black tries to do it too early, then he can get in trouble. So, especially if you're playing some like longer time controls, you might be able to see it, and that'd be pretty cool. So, yeah, I'll have to try to remember all this myself, but I definitely learned a lot by looking at this this line here with this early bishop c5 followed by d3. Interesting idea from black. Not terrible again, and just full of possibilities and traps and tactics for both sides. So keep your eyes open and have fun if you're playing these games. All right, catch you later.